Hey everyone, welcome back to LingoCast, the podcast of your language journey. Today is a very special episode. We're going to be interviewing our host, the creator of LingoCast, the mind behind LingoCast, the guy who started it all, the person that you all know and love, my good friend Eliseu. How are you, Eliseu?
I'm doing great. Episode 100, right? It's been a while. How are you doing, Sam?
I'm doing great. I feel so proud and honored to be part of this project and to be here with you on episode 100. We all know how much you are dedicated to this project, how many people you got to interview here, and I'm sure it hasn't been a super easy process, especially in the beginning of your journey. Today we're going to talk about that as well, and also more things on Eliseu about your personal questions as well. You know, we're just not just gonna do about your career or about languages, but also about personal life and a little bit about your story because we want to know, man. We are curious, and yeah. So, guys, this is episode 100. Before we start, let's talk about Patreon. You guys can support this project as well, and if you like LingoCast, if you like what we're doing here, you can support us on Patreon. Get access to extra content and also access to asking questions for the episodes and suggestions for the episodes, access to a group, to group calls. And yeah, like for example, today we have a questions from Linda that we're going to ask Eliseu as well later. And yeah, anything you want to add on the Patreon, Eliseu?
No, that's it. Perfectly what you said. Like you can be part of our group, like Linda, and interact with us, support us, get like be. We also write a blog. We write some extra content for our patrons, and you can help our project to grow even more and help us to publish more episodes more often. So yeah, everything you can find in the description of the episode, the links, they are always there in every episode. So you'll be helping me and Sam to have like more time, invest more in in our project, in equipment, in everything, to improve even more your experience and your language journey as well.
Yes, guys, that's it. If you can, go ahead. And if you want to support us, join the Patreon. All right. So, without further ado, I want to start by asking Eliseu, who is Eliseu according to Eliseu, right? Asking the man, who is Eliseu? How do you describe yourself and how was your childhood like?
Wow, Eliseu. I mean, if I say about who I am now, there are some things in my life that are a very big part of my life and who I became as a person. One of them is languages. Other one is comedy. Other one is basketball, and I think the other one would be hip hop. I think these probably these four things they shaped like the culture I have. My childhood was really nice. I mean, I was born and raised in Campinas, so 100 kilometers from São Paulo city. Um, I mean, I was not raised in a multilingual or bilingual family, so just like like most Brazilians, I was just speaking Brazilian Portuguese at home. And yeah, I mean, of course I had immigration background for especially from my father's side, so I was hearing the stories about that. I was always curious to try to get to know a little bit more about my Portuguese roots, my Venetian Italian roots. But yeah, it took a while for me to process. Like when you are young in Brazil, we do not have contact with so many cultures, right? So I had no idea about how far it is and I don't remember the first time I started having contact with different cultures to actually realize, but probably was through hip hop the first time I started having contact. So yeah, I think that's how my childhood was like pretty okay childhood in Brazil, pretty standard, and never went to like a lot of difficulties, like Brazilian middle class. So
I see. I see. Awesome. Awesome. Like, it's funny because my brother is a. I never talked about this, but my brother. I think did I talk about this before? I don't remember. Maybe you
I
asked
think you
about it.
haven't mentioned. Yeah, I know about it, but I think you haven't mentioned here.
Yeah. Let me just grab my charger real quick. I'm just gonna put my phone to charge because I don't know. Actually, I think we should add this.
Yeah.
real quick because if my phone turns off, I missed the connection, man. I'm sorry. Okay. All right, ready to go. Okay. Yeah. Maybe I talked about this before. But yeah, my brother is like a rapper. Right now, he's not doing like I think he took a break from it, but he has some songs uploaded. He has a song with a rapper called Samurai, who's kind of famous in São Gonçalo. He went to the national like rap battle thing, and I think he got to the semifinals or final. This Samurai guy, if I'm not mistaken. So he's popular around here. Maybe not just here, but in other parts too, like in Brazil too, maybe people who follow the rap battles know him definitely. And he has a song with him. They're friends, and he wants to do more on the rap parts. But right now, he's focusing on more content production, like similar to us. He's doing YouTube and these kind of projects. You know. All
Mhm.
right. So about São Paulo, man, I want to know more because I'm from Rio, and we have this rivalry, like we're rivals now. Uh, we're not. By the way, I don't feel that not that much. I think sometimes when we about this rivalry, like I don't think we are such rivals. But maybe only maybe playing sports or when we are
Mhm.
using different words like biscoito, bolacha, or things like that, right? Would you feel that rivalry in São Paulo? Like, do people like say like, "Oh, Rio sucks"?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, because I have this impression. I have the impression that people in São Paulo they have a stereotype about Rio and Cariocas in general. Um,
Mm,
I was listening to some podcasts. They are interviewing the candidates for to because we have elections now soon. Yeah, so the candidates that will run for to become the mayor in São Paulo city, and one of them said that São Paulo is becoming my worst nightmare. It's becoming real. Like when that was his phrase, and then and I think actually yeah, like people from Sao Paulo still sees like Rio as like an extremely dangerous place. Of course, I mean it's known that there is a problem with public security, but I think the way we see it is much worse. Like the way our media puts it as well is I think is much worse than actually it is. So I believe that there is a kind of rivalry also because São Paulo, the people from São Paulo, we kind of feel that we are the center of the country, the where
yeah.
things happen. And I think that on the other hand, people from Rio also feel this,
No,
right?
yeah. This is
The
true.
same
I
way.
think people from Rio think they're kings of like, or they're the most important thing. But like, there is something about the. I also feel like in Rio, I said this before. I feel like in the personality, people are naturally, I don't know the word in English for that, but like marrento, like with the this
Hmm.
strong personality. I feel like most of the people are like this in Rio. It's
Yeah,
people who like it's
try
not
to
in a
take
bad.
advantage. That's the stereotype, actually.
Yeah, but I don't mean just. It's more like just like say, "Oh my God, I'm the best," I'm gonna kill, I'm the best, I'm the best, I'm from Rio. Have that kind of, self like self confidence, maybe too much self confidence, I would say. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So yeah, I believe that there is actually this stereotype. I would say also stereotype because I believe that it's not 100% true. The image that people have from Rio and Cariocas, and so yeah. Also, people from São Paulo, we are kind of used that everyone that comes to São Paulo needs to adapt to the lifestyle we have. And like if someone comes from Northeast, they are going to work on TV or whatever, they need to lose their accent or neutralize their accent in Sao Paulo. So everyone is always getting used to us, and we are not used to you know adapting. So I think that is a skill that we kind of forget that is needed sometimes.
yeah. That's so true. That happens in Rio too. Like you said, people like don't. They want people to come and like adapt to the Rio
Hmm.
culture.
I
Yeah,
think
that's
it
so.
happens like in a very interesting example when we hear content from Brazil and people from São Paulo. They mention like cities in São Paulo state or neighborhoods or streets in São Paulo city, as everyone in Brazil would know where it is. And sometimes people don't understand like the jokes, the references, and but they say in a way that how is it possible that you don't know where it is? And I think
Yeah,
it's yeah, it's also a little bit arrogant, but in a different way than in Rio.
Yeah, this pride of like,
Mhm.
yes, we are now famous, you know. And like if you ask, then the funniest thing is that you said a lot of people say some cities in São Paulo as the whole as the entire country would know them, but they would also like also there's this the same people, some people, I mean not everyone, but a lot of people don't know even like the states in the northeast of Brazil, you know, like they don't even know the difference in states, and they want
Yeah.
people to know the city.
Yeah, but okay. An interesting fact about me is the fact that my mom is not from São Paulo. My mom's from Minas, so it's one state above São Paulo for who do not know Brazilian geography. Yeah, so it still is in southeast because Brazil is divided in four regions, so it's still in the same region, but it's a different federal state. So different accent, different traditions, and yeah,
It's very different, right? Like culturally speaking, I would say. What do you think?
yeah, yeah, very different, very different. Like the food, so they have very different traditional food. The way they spend life. Also, they're very uh, I would say very humble people, like very quiet, very chilled people. I would say people from
Welcoming,
Minas.
right?
Yeah, very welcoming. Yeah, I even heard a joke on. There's a podcast in Brazil that they interview people from different states. From Mauricio Meirelles, and he interviewed a guy from Rio and a guy from Minas, and he was saying like there's a kind of problem because it's like the guy from Minas is a kind of very good, like kind person, and the carioca is the person that will take advantage of the person from Minas, you know. And he mentions that, and I think according to the stereotypes, this could happen because these are the stereotypes of these two countries, right? Two
Yeah, yeah,
states.
of
Sorry,
course.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, of course. Like you said country and I heard state. That's the funniest part.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, it's true. Like those stereotypes are true. I would say that it's not. I'm not saying that people in Rio will take advantage of everyone and vice versa. And people in Minas are always chill and welcoming. Now, those stereotypes are just based on some characteristics that someone experienced from someone in that place, and that maybe that has happened more than one time. But that doesn't mean that everyone is like that, right? Like in any country, that just make it clear so that people don't tell me I'm like saying bad things about Rio or anything.
yeah, 100%.
Right? Right? That doesn't. Yeah, it happens everywhere. About São Paulo, did you always like growing up? Did you always like living there, or did you think that oh man, I don't belong here. I want to go somewhere else. How was your experience?
I think it took a while for me to go to a different capital in Brazil because even if I was going to my mom's city in Minas, it's not a big city. So I think first time I went to a different capital in Brazil was when I went to Florianopolis. I've been there once, and it was a little bit shocking because it looked like a different country. And I was very surprised that everything was different, like what people eat, how people behave, people saying like good morning on the street, like these kind of things that will never happen in Sao Paulo. And I was a little bit shocked with that diversity because sometimes like we live in Brazil, I think Brazilians we do not travel around Brazil like that much. And was the first time that I said, oh, maybe it would be cool to live in another state because I was born and raised in Campinas. Then I moved to Limeira, as another city like in Sao Paulo in the countryside. Um, but still, like I had never lived in another capital or of another federative state in Brazil. I remember also have family in Curitiba, so I've been there a couple of times. And first time also, I had this feeling, looks like another country.
Mm,
Many simple things, simple details that we have, like how people behave on a daily basis, or streets are cleaner than they are in São Paulo for that, like the habits that people have. But also on the other hand, people they are not. I would say they take. You need a little bit more time to get their trust, for example. So a little bit more European because they are more European. I would say in Curitiba than in São Paulo, and even more than in Rio, for example, probably. So I it took a while for me to realize that there is this huge diversity in Brazil, in that every state looks like because people sometimes people do not know, but Brazil is more than twice bigger than the European Union.
yeah.
And when I hear things like, "Oh, have you been to Amazonas?" Like Amazonas is like 3,000 kilometers from São Paulo. 3,000 kilometers is I think probably something like from Lisbon to Warsaw, maybe, or not even that, from Lisbon to Moscow, Minsk. So it's like very long distance. So Brazil is huge, and the diversity that we have in Brazil, like Brazil could be easily many countries if Brazil had split
Yeah.
it in the past. Like one example is Uruguay. It was Brazil and became a country, right? So um, we have this diversity, and I'm not sure that all of us we are aware of it, proud of it as we should be, and we do not know a lot about it. There's a lot to discover in Brazil. So back then I was not that um, interested in like knowing the accents and getting to know like different words like I am now. Also because, as I said, like being a person from Sao Paulo, you are used that people are kind of adapting to you, and you don't need to adapt to them.
Yeah, that's pretty. I see that in most Brazilians, myself included. I suffer for that, unfortunately. I've never been to another state. So like, I live in this cocoon, in this bubble, right? Like people say. I think a lot of us, like for example, I didn't even go to the like Christ the Redeemer, and it's in Rio. So like a lot of places like that. So we don't do domestic tourism that much. That's so true, and I think we should. You're absolutely right. I think we should know more about our own country, right? So if you are a Brazilian listening to this and you have visited Brazil, congratulations. If you have traveled a lot, I aspire to be like that in the future. I want to do that too. By the way, about in Rio, we talked about Rio and the danger in Rio. How about São Paulo? Do you think São Paulo is dangerous too? Do you think it's a nice place for foreigners to visit? Is it okay? How do you feel about it?
Honestly, I think that for a tourist, Rio is probably is more interesting than Sao Paulo city. Yeah,
Thank
because
you.
even if Sao Paulo is huge city and you have a lot to do, um, you do not have like the nature that you have in Rio. I'm talking about city and not state. Yeah, and in Rio you have a lot of touristic places. So you have the Christ, you have the Sugar Loaf, you have the famous beaches Ipanema,
A lot of museums.
um, Copacabana, which are actually indigenous names, and not many Brazilians know about it. Yeah, the many museums, because Rio was the capital like, of Brazil, was the capital of Portugal, and like Rio has a lot more history than Sao Paulo was a small city until 120 years ago, or even less than that. So yeah, I even heard recently that in Sao Paulo was like considered a poor state in the beginning of the colonial times. So I think that Sao Paulo is might be interesting for who want to find a job, or but even if the city is that big, I don't think that there are so many things to see like in Rio. I think the culture, the the nature in Rio is, I think, is more interesting for a foreigner to have the cultural shock. While São Paulo sometimes looks like a little bit like an average, like big city, metropole. That crazy lifestyle, everything really quick. Um, and for people who are visiting, I think Rio can be more welcoming than São Paulo. Even though I haven't been to Rio, yeah, but just about, I mean, judging by, for example, when Anthony Bourdain he had the show No Reservations, he went uh, to Rio. He loved Rio, loved to be on the beach, like playing like, foot volley, like drinking caipirinha and whatever. And he went to Sao Paulo. He was like, "Oh, this is one of the cities I hate the most," Like, and then someone offered him to take a helicopter to go to one neighborhood to the other one because the traffic jams are crazy. So yeah, this is Sao Paulo. Like, I think for many foreigners, it might not be that nice as Sao Paulo or as Rio or as Salvador, for example. That is the first Brazilian capital. Also, a lot of history, very different place. So can be more interesting, I believe.
Yeah, I think so too. I think there's a lot of places to go here. I think it's infinite. Like you can go to so many places in Rio and like different. Like you said, you can go see the nature. You go see museums. You can go to the beach. You can go to so many places, different places. So it's for all tastes, really. That's what the good part about Rio, the diversity of places you can go to. But yeah, Uh, and yeah, but do you think it's a dangerous place? How do you feel about that?
About São Paulo or about Rio?
Yeah, about São Paulo.
Well, I think that it has become more dangerous like recently. I would say,
Mhm.
especially after the pandemic. I heard I've seen the numbers of like homeless people. That increased a lot after the pandemic, and also the fact that uh, I heard that downtown is not like a very nice place. I mean, it has never been, but now it became worse. We have this place that we call Crackland in São Paulo. That is, yeah, it's. I don't see a lot of goodwilling from the authorities to try to resolve it in create some policies, public policies to try to find solutions for that. And yeah, and
It's not
I
peaceful
see.
solution, right?
Yes, exactly. So we have a lot of problems in the city nowadays, and yeah, it's a little bit shocking for me. I haven't had the opportunity to go to São Paulo last time I've been to Brazil. I mean, of course, I had to pass through, but I went directly to my city, so I didn't see much. But yeah, I think there's a lot of work to be done there, and yeah, in my opinion, it got a little bit worse than it was 5 years ago.
Mhm.
um, I mean, especially because of the pandemic. But of course, much better than how it was in the 90s or in the beginning of the 2000s. We have people know. I don't know if people know about it, but we have a crime faction in Brazil, in São Paulo, especially called PCC. And during that time, in the beginning of the 90s and 2000s, I remember like a week that we couldn't go to school because they were like some um, confrontation, police and people from the faction, from this criminal group, and they were burning, setting like buses on fire, and we couldn't go to school for 1 2 days or something, and we couldn't even go out of home. So I like these things, they do not happen anymore, but compared to how it was like 5 years ago, I think some things, they are becoming more and more urgent that we should start solving. And yeah, I think in general it has become more dangerous than it was.
Yeah, that makes sense. It also depends on the place. Looks like in Rio, depends where you go, right? It depends if you know where you're going, and like always go with the local. Always like know where you're going, and if you
Yeah,
do that, I think probably nothing's gonna happen, right?
yeah, that's a good tip for who wants to visit Brazil. Like, go with a local. And when I'm saying with a local of the city, because like if you take me and go to Rio, like no, it will not happen. We will both be robbed. But like or a local from the city, because like cities, they look very different. They have different mentality, different neighborhoods, and so yeah, it's good to have someone to advise you where to go, how to behave, what to do, and it helps a lot.
Another tip I would give is like if you're from another country, most likely we can recognize that you are from another country, and some criminals they like to take advantage of that. So it's you have to be careful with your belongings. Like don't go around using your phone all the time in places like you're alone. Like for example, let's say you're walking around the beach and you see that there is not very crowded, and you're using your phone, like you're calling attention to yourself, you have to pay attention with that. Also, if you are in crowded places, because someone can just like that, right? So pay attention to your belongings. Like don't get distracted while using your electronics and stuff like that.
100%.
There's this creator who says elastic hands. Some people, some elastic hands.
Yeah, I've seen that. You should be very careful. You shouldn't. Like, I always find very interesting how in Europe people put like phones on the back pocket. Like in Brazil, don't do that.
No, it's not a good idea. And don't take it out too much.
Yeah.
Okay, now about the podcast, because this is something that I'm sure a lot of people want to know. We probably already mentioned this story, but we never went deep into it. And today is the day to ask you about the perfect day, the episode 100 interview with you, asking you why you decided to start this podcast. I know a little bit about this story already, but you can go deeper into it. And did you expect it to be so successful? Like you know it was gonna work?
No, like honestly, when I started the podcast, wanted to be like solo podcast. I just wanted to share a little bit about what I was doing, the methods, the what I was doing back then. I was starting to learn a little bit more about language learning than before. Also living in Europe, trying to get to know more people, use the languages. So I wanted to live it, like to try to share with people. Maybe it would be useful for someone. But then I remember that when the war happened in Ukraine, a friend of mine, also a polyglot that lives here in Poland, I talked to her and we decided to make an episode together to talk about the truth about in Ukraine. Like, do people actually speak Ukrainian? Because there were actually a lot of people saying, "Oh, no one speaks Ukrainian in Ukraine" or something. And I said, "No, it's not true." But actually, it should be better to have a Ukrainian to talk about it. So we did an episode together, and I like the format of an interview. It was kind of an interview, like. I just recorded parts separately. And then I thought, I like that. I like to interview because, I mean, I always like the format of a talk show or something like that. And I remember then I decided to invite someone else. I said, I want to try that again. But people do not know me. Will people accept? And then I invited Patrick. So Patrick Lencastre, the Brazilian polyglot, also from Rio. And he accepted it. And and then he told me after that, oh, you should interview like this person. He gave me a contact of a teacher that was actually living in Warsaw, and I interviewed her. He gave me the contact of another person. I talked to the person, and then I started to get into the community one by one, starting to make friends. I remember also another moment that I also talked to. I told the patrons about it, that before creating the podcast, I met Lucas Bighetti. Like, I sent a message to him. He replied, he called me and we talked. I told him I have this idea of the podcast or something. He said, I think you should create it. I think it's a good idea. And we kept in touch. It motivated me a lot to start. And I did it started like that. But in the beginning, it should be just a solo podcast. Just me talking. And then I really enjoy the interview format, also to give the opportunity for people to listen to different content creators, different polyglots, different methods, different experiences, different languages. And that how I developed the more or less the format that we have now, the questions we have now, the interviews, and um to arrive at this point that we are now. Of course, another moment was when I met you, and then we decided to start working together. We did something to say for 1 year, and then you became like officially part of the podcast like recently. So, for me, it's great to give another, because it gives another perspective to the podcast, because we have different backgrounds, different methods, different ways of thinking. So I think this diversity is very good for the project. So yeah, I had never thought that it would reach so many people, but I'm very happy with the results. And I've had the opportunity of meeting many amazing people, some of them that I only knew from YouTube, and now I talk to them often. So yeah, it's been great.
That's awesome. Great to hear. And I'm sure the audience is very happy with LingoCast and the fact that you continue to do it. And like I said, so many guests came, and it also changed your life, right? Like for the better. You met so many amazing people, more opportunities as well. Because this is, I think, like this is the coolest part about languages, right? And anything related to it is meeting new people, getting to know about new cultures. But I want to ask you, what was your biggest challenge? Because it must have been really hard, like starting a podcast out of nowhere. Maybe a lot of people want to start a podcast, like you did. Maybe someone's listening and always had this desire, this goal of starting a podcast and sharing, speaking about something they're passionate about. What was your biggest challenge, and how did you overcome that?
I think that the biggest challenge was actually the fact that I was not very sure about how and where. There was like no long-term vision of the podcast. I just wanted to start. And so I didn't know what I would actually do, how, had no experience doing that. And I was not very good with computer stuff back then. So doing all this stuff, like I needed to learn how to edit, to publish, to do everything, by myself. So that I took like a long time to learn it. It was actually easier than it was than because just the fact that I was making mistakes and learning from that. But at the end, it was not that difficult. So I think if you want to start a podcast, the first tip is start. You will learn on the way, but it's also good to have some vision about what you want to do, how you want to do, who you want to talk to, what kind of content you want to produce. Do you want to monetize or not? How do you want to monetize? What's the main goal? So I think
The
it's
mission, right?
important to yeah, exactly, the mission. What's the goal of it? So of course it's been changing. I've been shaping it through the journey. It wasn't very clear for me when I started back then.
Mhm. Makes sense. That yeah,
Yeah,
that's
I
so
think,
true. Yeah, sorry.
and I think another challenge would be the fact that interviewing people was not very easy. You know,
Mm.
because you need to like remember the questions. You need to put it in the format. You need to remember things, ask interesting questions. Uh, you know, maybe I try to ask questions that the person hasn't talked about, but also mention some basic things so people will understand the basics and the context. So yeah, that I had no experience with that, and it was great for my communication skills.
I think we can all agree that you've improved a lot, like, because if you probably listen to episode 1 of LingoCast and episode 100, I know I'm interviewing now, but just compare Eliseu from the beginning of the LingoCast and how he is right now. And you, I've said this before. I think he's a great interviewer because you get this experience, right? Like out of asking questions and where to maybe to guide the interview to somewhere that's interesting for the audience, that's good also for the person who's speaking, and trying to make it the best interview possible. And I think that that takes skill, experience. For example, I don't think I'm a great interviewer, such as yourself. I don't have that much experience. I did do live streams, so maybe like doing live stuff, I'm good. Like doing live things, that improvising. But I'm not good. I'm not so good in preparing like you'd prepare. Like you have all these things organized, and you have more like the vision of how it's supposed to go. You have this more clear than me. I feel like I'm good at improvising. That's the thing I'm good at because I do so many live streams on Instagram.
Yeah, I think everything is about practice, right? Also, I noticed doing something to say, how you can see like from something to say one to the last one we recorded, how much you also improved doing that recording in front of the camera, getting to know the platforms, how to behave on that, add things, know equipment, all this stuff. So yeah, it's a process. We need to go through. We need to trust the process, and I think there are no shortcuts at the end.
Yeah, that's so true. Just experience anything you want to do, right? And if you want to start a podcast too, day one's gonna suck because it's normal, man. It's gonna be not so good. Like your first YouTube video, your first podcast episode, your like first Instagram live stream is gonna suck. But you shouldn't go with that mindset. You should go with the mindset of like, let me just do this and like share things out of like sharing what's inside of you when you want to put out, not with like I have to do this the best way. I have to be perfect, right? Not in the first episode. You can improve, of course. I mean, like you have this goal and you want to improve every episode, but don't go with that perfectionism. Like, as yeah, it's okay to suck in the beginning. Like that's how it works.
Yeah.
And
And it's
right,
important to identify the mistakes and correct on the next one, and then you will develop it. It's okay. Like, so try to watch what you did, see what you can improve on the next one, improve on the next one, and keep doing like that.
absolutely, that's so true. Before we talk about basketball, I want to ask you, since you started doing comedy recently, and now it's such an important part of your life. I've seen you be
Mhm.
doing it constantly. I watched the Instagram, TikTok reels; they're very funny. And I wanted to ask you, what did you learn from comedy? Like two things. Yeah, and yeah, like how did that change your view of the world, right? And Do you think you're gonna? Do you see yourself in 5 years still doing comedy?
I hope so. I really want to be doing comedy in 5 years. It became a very important part of my life. Has always been a big part of my life. But on the other side, I was always watching comedy. I was writing jokes, but I was not performing. And again, as the podcast, I needed to do the first time, and it took a while for me to have the courage to go there and do my first open mic. But I did it. And I think that what has impacted me and my life the most was communication. To know that everything is about communication, how to choose words, to think about who you are talking to. Because, like, if you think doing comedy in English for foreigners, it's hard because every person that sitting there has a different background. So they have different references. They will not understand all the references. If I will make jokes about specific things in Brazil or Brazilian references, people will not understand. So I need to think about who is there watching, with whom I'm communicating. So I need to also to think the word order, choose the right words to make the joke works. So there are many details that about communication that I never imagined that it was so important. Because if you think about a joke is the right thing in the right moment. Because if you have a great joke in the wrong moment, it's not a joke, um, and it will not be funny. So this have developing these communication skills, and I think it's very important. It has helped me in many senses, like while communicating with people, thinking about what's the message I want to transmit with that. Because at the end, when you start studying comedy, learning comedy, you realize that it's not that hard to create a joke. And then you notice it's so easy to create a joke, but the most important is not actually to create a joke, is the message you want to transmit through the joke. And then it becomes it gets a little bit deeper, like what you want to transmit, what you want to communicate. So you are there, you have a moment to speak, people are paying attention to you. What do you want to transmit? And then that's what you think. For me, it has never been only making people laugh. So my jokes, they have always um, a message in them. Like if it's political, if it's about myself, about my background, my experience, but there is something that I want to transmit in every joke I'm making.
I feel like that's the coolest, the best comedians. I think they say things. It's like express themselves through the jokes, right? Like they really have something to say. Something to say. They always have this the points of view, right, on the joke as well. Like they want to share something, and I think that's the coolest. When you just say jokes just to, when you're like surface level, you're not so funny, you know. Like I was talking about Dave Chappelle. It's the same thing. Like I know he's sometimes, I think he recently, I think it was half canceled because of a documentary in Netflix. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about, like how offensive is the joke or not. I'm talking about the fact that, for example, when he talks about the day to day, like how police works and how we interact with the government, how we interact with people, and all these things. I think there's, when we're trying to say something through the joke, and it's always like it becomes something bigger, right? And it's you're a better comedian as well when you're saying something, not just being
It's like rap as well, right? Like you are telling also a little bit about your perspective, maybe a perspective that is unique from you, and you want people to listen to it, or about your political views about something. And I think the nice way is that in true comedy, you transmit a message in a funny way, in a much softer way. So you can make a political joke about something that is been happening, but you tell it, people will be listening because it's comfortable. It's a joke. They will absorb the information because they are laughing. So it's also a great tool.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I agree. And if the joke is really, really good, even people who actually were supposed to be offended by your joke will actually laugh. Right? So,
100%. 100%.
About basketball, I know basketball is a huge part of your life, but even more when you actually were playing. But when did that passion start? And what was the thing
Mhm.
that made you start loving basketball?
Well, what made me start loving basketball was hip hop. Yeah, so before everything was hip hop. I think that hip hop was the beginning of everything that content language learning, because there was the first time I started having contact with a different culture, with a different language, like different sounds, everything, and trying to understand the different reality. I couldn't understand it very well. So, but in the United States, rap culture and basketball culture, they are very connected. In Brazil, not that much, but in the United States, when I started listening to hip hop, I mean, I can tell the story. Like basically, my cousin, she had a boyfriend, and he was selling CDs back then on the street. Like he gave me, it was my birthday, I think, and he gave me a CD from Akon. And I decided to listen to it, and I loved. I mean, I memorized every song from that CD. I love that. It was the first contact I have. Was it more like was more like hip hop style? Was not very rap. Had some rap songs, some R&B songs. Was great. Different style because Akon is actually African, but I liked what I was listening to it. So it opened the door for me to a different world. And then I started to get to know more about basketball and follow basketball, and also because of the style, right? The clothes, the basketball shoes, and so on. And then a friend of mine that also liked hip hop invited me to go to for a test in the team he was playing in our city. And I went there. I couldn't play basketball, but I was tall, so I was 11, I think, and I was 175. So I was quite tall for the age. So they took me. They started to teach me basketball, everything I should know, and there where everything started, because it always connected with all of it. And then with through basketball, I started having contact with English because I also wanted to watch the matches, but we didn't have so many um, like shows or games on TV back then, like in Portuguese as we have now in Brazil. So I needed to watch a lot of things in English on YouTube or on NBA website, and I started having a lot of contact with English. I couldn't speak, but I was absorbing that. It took a while for me to notice that I was absorbing that content. I realized that years later, but yeah, that was part of my lifestyle. Like hip hop basketball was part of my lifestyle for many years. And I play in 3 different teams. I learned a lot about discipline, a lot about I like Kobe Bryant very much. So the Mamba mentality, that's something that also I try to apply in the language learning, creating like the habit, working hard, doing that every day. And yeah, for me, it became also part of my mentality, my lifestyle, my mindset. So it wouldn't be possible without these 2 elements.
I love it. I love it. I love Kobe Bryant too. Like I think he's great, and I know unfortunately he passed, but I think his legacy is still out there. So that's why I say he is, because he is great still. Even after his passing, people are still watching his videos and watching his speeches and getting motivated and inspired by his lifestyle. Um, but I want to ask you something that maybe I hope it's not a trigger as a regret or something. Uh, but if you could go back in time, would you become a pro player and shoot for the NBB, which is the National Brazilian Basketball? I don't know if
Mhm.
that's right. And
Uh,
the
yes, a
NBA.
new Brazilian basketball,
New,
Novo Basquete Brazil.
exactly.
Uh,
Would you do that? Would you just like shoot for the pro
yeah, I
basketball?
had a moment that I needed to decide if I would try it or not, because the team that I was playing, they had the team in NBB. So I needed to decide, but honestly, back then I think I was not mature enough. I didn't have like that mindset that other guys that I already had developed. Not only like the like mindset part, also physical part. In any part, I think I was ready for that. Maybe if I would like come back in time and from the beginning, I would approach things in a completely different way, more professional since the beginning. But maybe yes. But Actually, no. I think it was good. I would do it maybe a little bit more intense, but I'm happy with the way it was and to finish and being it, letting be part of my life as it was. So not to be a basketball player, because honestly, to be a basketball player, you need to give up on a lot of things. I've seen some people that played with me, their lives, now, like as an athlete, how much you need to give up because your body is your tool. Um, you need to take care, you need to sleep early, you need to take care of what you eat, and it's not healthy. You have a lot of injuries. I had a lot of injuries. So yeah, I mean that's not thinking like in hindsight. That's not the life I wanted for me. So I'm happy to have it like over in uh, my timeline.
So you're happy with how things went, and you understand that
Yeah,
maybe the consequences aren't worth
yeah, and
the risk.
I'm happy. I'm happy. Maybe I would like to play more basketball for fun. That is something that I have been doing recently. But yeah, I'm pretty satisfied with how things are, and uh, yeah, it happened what it had to happen. So I don't regret anything, I would say.
I love that. I love this approach to life, where like what had to happen happens or happens and will happen, because also like it is not that simple, right? It's not that if you take a turn or if you don't do something, something amazing will happen. Sometimes no,
Mhm.
life is unpredictable. So I think that what happened had to happen. Even like things that we see as bad, um, like are just supposed to happen, and we have to just adapt and try to learn something from it, become better,
Yeah,
and yeah.
find solutions. Yeah, and
Uh,
yeah, I think I learned everything I had to learn from basketball to use on the next chapters of my life.
Absolutely, that's the approach that I think everyone should have to life and decisions. So let's go to to a question from the followers, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Because we have some questions from Linda. Thank you, Linda. Linda is a Patreon member as well, for so she gets to ask those questions. And the first question from Linda is about languages. And we haven't talked about languages, guys, because these questions about languages will go into the multilingual episode, where we're going to talk about ask Eliseu in the language that he speaks, sorry, and that we have in common. So I'll ask questions about languages in other languages. So that's why, if you guys are asking why no languages, that's why. Okay, so Linda asks, what's your core motivation to learn languages? That's the first question. Core motivation.
I think my motivation is to understand different cultures and be able to access different content, like mentality, learn from different cultures. Yeah. So more than actually the language itself, but the what I can access with the language. So for me, this is the most important.
Yeah, perfect, man. Perfect. I think I have a similar answer. Yeah, when you asked me that, I feel like the same way, like using um, mostly to like connect with others, right, and learn from others and learn different cultures and the content as well. Uh, what would you do differently? Is another question from Linda. What would you do differently if you'd start a language podcast today? Because today is different, right? When you started years ago, it was like different technology, different time. So what would you
Mhm.
do if you started now?
I would do it with video since episode number one. But maybe it's hard to say because that was actually a process for me. Recording the first thing by myself, getting used to recording first, and then getting used to video. But yeah, I think I could have started earlier the video format. I would also think about a way to monetize it, because after some time you want to have more time, you want to have better equipment, you want to have more support to produce more episodes. Because I remember when I was doing one episode per week, was really nice, but it was not healthy. So I would like to do that, but on the financial situation, after the war, The economical situation changed a lot here in Poland, and I wouldn't be able to do it once a week. So I would have made a plan to develop something, to make like more monetize it earlier, in order to grow the project quicker and to reach more people, to be able to invest more in it.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah. But well, we're glad, even though I'm glad you started doing video as well after, because I also think that in video you reach more people as well on YouTube and different audiences, and also people get to see our beautiful faces, right? So you're welcome, guys. No, the other question from Linda is, what was the coolest question? That's a difficult question to answer. What was the coolest question you asked during the last 99 episodes? Is there like a question that you feel like, man, this is the one I feel like the best one, or maybe one of the best that you remember?
Wow, I cannot remember now like one question that the questions. Of course, sometimes I hear like people say, "Oh, that was a great question. Oh, no one has ever asked me that," and it's nice to hear that. But I cannot think about one question. Like, no, oh, I don't know. I remember now from my today's perspective as a comedian. I remember once asking a question to Stefano that I asked him. No, that I asked him how he developed this. Like how did he reach such a high level in Portuguese? Because every time that I hear him speaking in Portuguese, I wonder if it's my native language. And it was a punchline that I built back then without knowing, how to build a punchline. I was not a comedian back then, and I always remember this moment as this question because um, sometimes I think I should bring more humor to podcasts, to not talk it like so seriously. And this moment, this question, it's a little bit remarkable for me because I managed to ask it in a funny way, I would say.
Good. Also, I think a good question is not only the question itself, but also how it impacts the interviewed, the person who's being interviewed in the audience, like you said. And if I may choose one, if I may like not choose, but like, I'm not the one that's gonna say this is the best one. But like, if I could say one that I like a lot, is the one that we always ask at the end of the episodes that,
Yeah.
you came up with, and the definition of fluency. What does being polyglot mean to you? I love that. I think that makes it what it's supposed to be, which is not like a perfect answer. It's not like the ultimate, oh, there's like a line you cross or whatever, I feel like when you ask that question, you give other people the possibility to say their own definition, and that's how it's supposed to be. It's subjective, and I think it's a great question. If I like this one.
Yeah, me too. I think it's good because I wanted to show people that different polyglots have different definitions of it. So what does it mean? I wanted to hear different answers from this, and I think for people who are paying attention, it can be very useful as well to hear different definitions and in order to create their own.
That being said, what's your definition of fluency, Eliseu?
I like I mean, my definition of fluency is like when you become independent in the language. So a good example is like, I don't know if you have ever felt that, but you get a message in the language and you are, oh my God, in this language. Oh no, I can't believe I need to answer in that language. I think in that moment, you are not very fluent. You're not very comfortable to do that. But when you just, get a question or something and you said, okay, I would just reply, and just replied. And in that moment, you are comfortable to express all your thoughts, and you are confident enough to speak the language because you already noticed that you can speak the language. I think that's the moment that I want to say you are fluent, because it flows. And of course, you are not proficient in the language. You can be fluent being B2, sometimes B1, depending on the language, depending on how are your communication skills. But yeah, that's my definition of fluency. It's more about how you manage your communication, and how confident you are with the language.
I love that. I love that. So true. And what does being a polyglot mean to you?
For me, it's a lifestyle. I mean, being a polyglot, becoming a polyglot was never a goal for me. But on my journey, especially in Europe, I met many people that can speak different languages just because they learn at home, at school, or whatever. And they actually do not live the lifestyle that we actually do. They do not care about languages. They just speak them, and that's it. Why, on the other hand, we are always asking people, "Oh, your language is like that. Teach me a word. I wanna know a word. I know a word, or what does it mean? How to say this?" And you are interested in that, so it's part of the lifestyle. Part of the lifestyle, like when you are watching a video, watching a movie in a different language that you do not know, you try to learn some words and try to catch it. So that's for me what polyglot means, because you can be just a multilingual person, just quoting Richard Simcott that separates multilingual and polyglot, which actually, the etymology is the same, but there are some people that they simply do not care. The language for them is something just natural, that's not part of their life and their lifestyle. While for me it is, and for me that's what makes me a polyglot. And I even think that people can be a polyglot speaking 2 or 3 languages just because they are living the polyglot lifestyle.
Yeah, that's so true. How you feel about those languages is more important than maybe how advanced your level in those languages are. And what we mean by that is not saying that, oh, so you just go ahead and like everyone is a polyglot then. Like Eliseu said, if the languages are part of your life, you like use those languages because you want to, right? Like to, and also like you have this relationship with them. I feel like you are a polyglot because if you've been doing it for a while, especially, it's part of your life. So it's like a lifestyle, like Eliseu said. So true. All right, guys. So those are the last questions for today. We're arriving to the end of this episode, and before I forget, there is another episode that we're gonna do with the languages that we have in common. So if you want to listen to the multilingual episode, it's a shorter one, just the questions in the language that we speak. Make sure you check that out. Yeah, anything else you want to say, Eliseu, before we finish?
No, I think it's great to be interviewed, to be able to tell some different stories that people who have listened to 99 episodes or more, they enjoyed. And so it's cool to be here and tell a little bit about actually my personal story and the story of the podcast, and the behind the scenes of it. It's great to be interviewed by someone who's part of the podcast like you. So I'm very glad to have you as a partner on that.
Thank you so much, man. It really means a lot. Like, thank you for giving me this opportunity. And guys, thank you for listening. This was episode 100, a very special one. Hope you guys have liked this interview with Eliseu, and I hope I have been a good interviewer today. And yeah, guys, thank you so much for listening. Again, if you want to support on Patreon, the links will be in the description. If you want to share this episode with someone you think could be interested in this, like who likes language learning, so make sure you share that with your friends and everyone. Thank you for listening. I'll see you guys in the next one.